The first metal album is from 1983. What do you think of that idea? This is something I've been saying, and I kind of got pushback about this because I don't think people were like reading between the lines and realizing this is when I was doing the Les Binks tribute, and we were talking about stained class, realizing that the whole idea of this concept, this premise, is that I'm drawing a distinction between heavy metal and metal. So as you've been seeing, we've been doing a series of shows on albums. So the intentionality of albums, who invented heavy metal. You can see that on the Contrarians. As I'm doing this now, we've done about, 7 or 8 of those. I agree with everybody else that the first heavy metal album is Black Sabbath. But I always loved this idea how how the UK people call rock. They say rock all the time, rock, and rock means kind of hard rock. It kind of means heavy metal in some of the parlance or some of the ways they use that term, right? And I think metal has a different meaning from the word heavy metal. Now, good buddy of mine who I do an AC/DC podcast with. You can check that out. Just Google it. Kicked in the Teeth an AC/DC podcast. John Gaffney, he makes the assertion that Judas Priest Stained Class is the first metal album. Now, I don't know if you want to put metal in quote marks or metal with a cap, but let's just forget all of that and just draw this distinction about metal. So his point is that this is just stepping it up. It's a new level of intentionality. It's got Exciter on there. Every song on it is really down a committed path of non-commerciality, I suppose. It's very progressive. It's relentlessly heavy throughout, save for part of Beyond the Realms of Death. And, even the production, I'm sure John is thinking a little bit of the production here because it's a very finicky, thin academic production, the same way Sin After Sin is. Now, this is why I push back on his idea and I don't quite agree with it. I don't see a big difference between this album and Sin After Sin. You could have just picked that one and it would have been kind of the same idea. But no, I don't like this idea in general that it's the first metal album. So this is why I've always, by the way, you can get this is my latest book, Judas Priest album by album. It is a, album by album trawl Q&A idea. I've got a panel of experts and fans, a few rock stars in there as well. And we go through every studio album, right? So you get that at martinpopoff.com. So for me, what I've been saying, for quite a while, I mean, I definitely call Metallica's Kill 'Em All the first thrash album. But I like calling this the first metal album because I have this sort of idea that, I've floated across these new wave of British heavy metal shows I've been doing recently. The new wave of British heavy metal is drunk priest or punk priest kind of thing, right? So I never thought that Iron Maiden was doing anything particularly new as they work their way through the new wave of British heavy metal. Now, we do have a little bit of that small subgenre that we might call speed metal, right? So that kind of comes up with the likes of the first Raven album, the second Raven album. You could say there's a little bit of that in your Jaguars and your Tyson Dogs, and but really, there's not a massive difference in terms of being drunk priest, being low budget priest, being, I've often said, speed metal is just thrash with the hi-hat open and screaming and less palm muting sort of thing. But there's been all these little things along the way that contribute to this short-lived idea of speed metal, and Judas Priest is obviously a huge part of that with Let Us Pray, Call for the Priest, Exciter. We've got Deep Purple Fireball. We've got Accept, Fast as a Shark. I usually throw in Pat Travers' band Hammerhead in there as well. But when we get to this record, first off, as the first thrash record, I absolutely believe that we have a very locked down, demonstration of palm muting. We've got great production values. I think this album sounds great. There's no problems with this album. It's got a lot of brightness at the top. It's got a lot of bottom end. You do get a lot of money riff, mid-pace chugging sort of thing. I personally have never thought there was much new wave of British heavy metal in this album. I think you can. I think you get kind of the spirit of Diamond Head in here, where you do get just really good mid-paced money riffs, and you do get long songs and a variety of riffs, and that's kind of a Diamond Head thing. But I don't hear much else new wave of British heavy metal, particularly in this album. So that's another reason I think it's a break. But the main reason it's a break are things like Metal Militia, Phantom Lord, Hit the Lights, Whiplash. This is why this is the first thrash album. I remember putting this on for the first time, and us, me and my buddies looking at each other. I think it was maybe just me and Forrest Hoop on that day, but saying, there's a new level of aggression and a new level of anger here. Now, the other thing that's important about this, as saying it's the first metal album, I'll get to the definition of metal in a second, is this new style of no pretext of trying to particularly sing. James is just very shouty and angry and aggressive on this. So it's kind of a new form of vocal. Now we do have this a little bit of this form of vocal, and now let's get into this definition of metal. So what I like about calling this the first metal album, and honestly, I suppose you could make an argument for Venom Welcome to Hell or Venom Black Metal as the first metal album. And if you really want to go outside, you could go to Motorhead, right? You can go to, say, Overkill, a little bit less so Bomber. You can go to Ace of Spades. You can go to Iron Fist. So there are levels of extremity. Now, this is an important part of this whole process, right? Extremity. So we have had a little bits of extremity before, and I suppose, like I say, mostly with the likes of Venom. But I like calling this the first metal album because so let's try map this out here. So like I say, new wave of British heavy metal is essentially drunk or punk Priest. So what we're getting is just a more youthful, loosened, slightly dirtier, low budget version of the very best and most technical heavy metal things we ever heard in the 70s. And that would be basically Judas Priest, certain Black Sabbath things, very, very few Deep Purple things, actually some Queen songs, and a little bit of Rainbow, and second to Priest, oddly enough, the very heaviest Scorpion songs, right? That as well, and a little bit of things that you would hear, the very, very, very heaviest things you would hear out of like UFO and Thin Lizzy sort of thing. But honestly, I think if I had to pick three bands, it would be Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and Scorpions, right? So what happens with this idea of metal, calling something metal? So metal is a term that you actually hear now as we move forward through the decades. Let's define what metal is first of all. So as you move forward through the decades, and fans of this kind of music get younger and younger, you see the term heavy dropped from the idea of heavy metal. And for those really in the journalist set and really into this stuff, heavy metal now is a little bit synonymous with power metal. So what we used to call power metal all through those years, as it picks up through your Maidens and your Halloweens and your Blind Guardians, and then it becomes a kind of a bigger deal in the 90s and Hammerfall and all that. That now, when you say heavy metal, it's kind of code for power metal. When you say metal, it means everything else but at the heavy end of things. So here's the idea. So Kill 'Em All, as the invention of thrash, as the album that invents thrash in July 1983, is also kind of the birth of death metal, because death metal is an evolution from thrash, right? And black metal is an evolution from death metal and thrash, and lyrically and philosophically, your Venoms and Merciful Fates and Bathory in the early days, right? Bathory is very extreme as well, but Bathory's later than this, right? You could put Hellhammer in there, Hellhammer and Celtic Frost as well. I mean, that's pretty much the same sort of time, and that, but they aren't famous enough, and they're a little too nichey to be called the birth of metal. I think what happens with this, because this album is so big and this band is so big, and this album had so much influence and everybody loved it, as they did Ride the Lightning in 1984. This is an important album that is an inspiration on all these things. So to sum up, it is the first thrash album. And I would call it the first metal album, because now we have just a bigger, no nonsense version of, there's no ballads on here. The closest thing to a ballad on here is the bass solo, Anesthesia, right? So there's no ballad. So this is absolutely no nonsense at a new no nonsense level behind anything previous. And by being the first thrash album and birthing thrash, it is the birth of death metal. It's the birth of black metal. And as we come all the way up to today's metal, as we move through the likes of Pantera is a big influence on what we get to today. Today's metal is so incredibly heavy and progressive and extreme black metal, thrash, death metal, gruntcore, pigcore vocals, and so complicated and so heavy in those crazy breakdowns and very atonal. Meshuggah is a big deal on arriving at where we are today, right? That is metal, and yeah, if you're a metal fan these days, if you're a young metal fan, you rarely hear the term heavy metal being applied to any of these bands anymore. It's just, our attention spans are shorter. Maybe that's a metaphor for this, but it is just called metal, right? So that's why I am calling Kill 'Em All the first metal album, 1983. And again, this is a little bit of a reaction to those comments where people say, "Oh, Martin, gets it wrong or got it wrong," and forgetting that I'm making this distinction between heavy metal and metal. So there you go, 1983, Kill 'Em All. Metallica is the first metal album. Let us know what you think in the comments below on this. You can subscribe. You can join our Patreon, and that gets you onto our panel situation. We've got merch as well. But yeah, it'd be nice to keep having those subscriber numbers go up. So check that out, and yeah, hit like if you liked what this whole episode was about. But there you go. We shall talk to you later.